and welcome back to Temple Hyacinthus. Let me start this video by saying plainly, right off the bat, that Hellenic polytheists do not believe that Greek mythology is literal or historic truth. If that doesn't make sense to you, if that confuses you, I definitely encourage you to stick around to the end of this video. When discussing how Hellenic polytheism's view on scripture differs from other mainstream religions, the main religious tradition that I am going to be pulling reference from is Roman Catholicism. It is the non-pagan religious tradition that I have the most experience with and the most knowledge of. So, in Roman Catholicism, the Bible is a document that is meant to be taken both literally and as a form of historic truth. As an example, I was taught growing up that the story of Adam and Eve wasn't a metaphor, it wasn't allegorical, it wasn't supposed to be symbolic of the first evolved humans that came into being. I was taught that the story of Adam and Eve was historic. It happened, as described in the Bible, in the same way that the Civil War happened as explained in history textbooks. I was taught that evolution was not real and that all of humanity descended from one couple, Adam and Eve. Now, not all Christians are mythic or biblical literalists, but many are. The Christians that are aligned with this worldview believe that the stories described in the Bible actually happen as described in the Bible. So, being that I was raised Roman Catholic throughout my whole life, I was under the impression that every religion, religious tradition, spiritual path, all had this same view of whatever they considered to be their holy scripture. I was under the impression that every religion on earth had this same literalist mindset when it came to holy books. And it wasn't until the latter half of college and honestly graduating from college that I started to do more independent research and came to realize that that is just not the case. If you were raised being aware of Greek mythology, which I feel like is a pretty common experience for those of us who went through the American public school system, then you are probably familiar with the mythology of Kronos, the god of time, and his wife Rhea, goddess of the mountains, and how their children came into being. But Rhea was subject in love to Kronos and bore splendid children, Hestia, Demeter, and gold-shod Hera, and strong Hades, pitiless in heart, who dwells under the earth, and the loud crashing earth-shaker, and wise Zeus, father of gods and men, by whose thunder the wide earth is shaken. These great Kronos swallowed, as each came forth from the womb to his mother's knees, and this intent, that no other of the proud sons of heaven should hold the kingly office among the deathless gods. For he learned from earth and starry heaven that he was destined to be overcome by his own son, strong though he was, through the contriving of great Zeus. For the sake of simplicity, we are going to treat this story, that comes from Hesiod's Theogony, as the Hellenist equivalent of the book of Genesis from the Bible. But when comparing these two stories, there is one major difference. Modern Hellenic polytheists do not believe that the story that I just read from Theogony is literal. We don't think it is necessarily the truth or historical. We do not believe that Kronos in humanoid form actually swallowed all of his children whole. For one, the gods are not human, nor are they really humanoid. We imagine and depict them in that way so that we can better understand and relate to them, but that's not actually their true nature or true form. I could do a whole video about that concept, and I might do one later, but for now, I'm just going to leave that statement as is. For another thing, the idea that 5 infants could not only survive being swallowed whole by their father, but could also survive and continue to live and grow in his stomach into adulthood is simply not possible. It is a myth, a story, an account of events that didn't actually happen being told for the purposes of establishing religious tradition, creating political or social commentary, or just to entertain. These written works establish religious traditions and create religious understanding without having to be taken as truth. Since works from Hesiod and Homer and others are the primary documents that survive documenting Hellenic faith, in the modern day, these are our scriptures. These are our holy texts. But imagine if in 1,000 years, the only surviving record of Christianity was the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. Sure, there is a lot in the musical that aligns with what is recounted in the Bible, but the purpose of that work is to entertain, not to inform religious belief or tradition. Now, this isn't a perfect analogy because as far as we know and as far as I have researched, there never was a Hellenic polytheist Bible or a core central text that dictated the beliefs and practices for all followers of the faith. It was, and still is, a decentralized cultural and spiritual tradition that varied wildly from city-state to city-state. But the point still stands that taking these myths and these stories that have survived through history as literal is not only antithetical to the modern Hellenic polytheistic movement, but is also antithetical to the ancient spiritual and religious traditions that we are trying to recreate and revitalize. Did a humanoid Pluton actually abduct a humanoid Persephone, taking her from the world of men to the world of the dead that exists just below the Earth's surface? No. Do we still observe holidays that mark this mythical event? Still observe Pluton and Persephone as consorts and spouses? And still honor these stories even though we know they are allegorical for natural and sociological events? Yes. That is the beauty of a religious tradition that is rooted in mythic symbolism as opposed to mythic literalism. These stories are like the books you study in English class. Yes, there is some kind of story or meaning that you can glean from just reading it as is. But if you analyze the text, if you engage with it, if you try to find the hidden meaning and symbolism and historical allegories, you are going to not only enjoy the text more, but understand it in the way that it was meant to be understood. So I hope all of that made sense, and I hope that this helped you better understand both Greek mythology and Hellenic polytheism. If any of it didn't make sense, or if you have any follow-up questions, definitely feel free to comment those below. Also, if you haven't already, please consider following Temple Hyacinthus on Tumblr and TikTok. That is the best way to get a full view and understanding of all of the things that we are doing and creating. Thank you so much for watching. Irene, peace and farewell.